Hello and welcome to The Game Changers. I'm Sue Anstis, and this is the podcast where you'll hear from trailblazing women in sport who are knocking down barriers and challenging the status quo for women and girls everywhere. What can we learn from their journeys as we explore key issues around equality in sport and beyond? I'd like to start with a big thank you to our partners Sport England, who support the Game Changers podcast through a National Lottery Award. My guest today is Carla Ward, an English football manager who's currently leading the Republic of Ireland women's national team with an ambition to qualify for the 2027 World Cup. Carla's extensive playing career as a midfielder includes stints at Leeds, Bristol, Doncaster and Sheffield, along with time playing in Spain. Her most successful spell came at Sheffield FC, where she was club captain, making over 200 appearances and scoring over 100 goals. Carla then moved into coaching and had a very significant impact at women's teams at Sheffield United, Birmingham City and Aston Villa, before recently taking this prestigious role with the Republic of Ireland's national team. So Carla, your coaching and managerial journey are fascinating, but I'd like to start with your playing career if I can. So where did it all start for you?
Grew up on a council estate with a lot of boys. It's always the way, isn't it? So yeah, I started out in a small estate in Torquay where all the boys played, and it was probably the only thing that most people did. And I wasn't one to hang around with the girls when I was young, to be honest. So off I went over to the school playing fields, and there was a very large field in the middle of the estate as well. So it was jumpers for goalposts. And yeah, it all started there really. Used to just love football and playing out with the boys more than anything.
And at what point did you realise that you had talent beyond kind of playing at that level?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's funny because when I was at school, there was a boys' team. There was never a girls' team. And I remember one day looking at, and I'd been training, of course, but I remember looking every week, the sign would go up of who was in the team. And my name was on it. And not only my name was on it, I had the captain's armband next to me. So I was thinking, oh, I'm in the boys' team here. And then from that moment on, I thought, this is a possibility. And then as I grew up, I just naturally just had a love for it. Found myself, when you find yourself like good at something that you were passionate about, and I just continued that. And then obviously the girls' team started coming along. It makes me sound really old, doesn't it? But girls' teams come along, and then the women's teams come along, and I just kind of kept stepping up. And every time that sort of, even when I was 14. Then going into the seniors earlier than I should have. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, I can do something here. So yeah, I always loved it. It was just a very, very strong passion, and I just continued to play everywhere I went.
And who were your kind of cohort? Who were the peers at that time that, as you came through those younger ages?
So I played down, funnily enough, I played down in Newquay and Torquay, both in Devon and Cornwall. So there wasn't too much going on there. But then when I went up to Bristol, and I was playing with the likes of Siobhan Chamberlain and Katie Holtham and Shelley Cox at the time. And then when I went to Leeds, it was a star-studded team. There was me, Steph Houghton and Jade Moore in midfield. There was Ellen White and Sue Smith up top. There was Lucy Ward playing. That team there was unbelievable, There was just some fascinating players. And so, yeah, I've been really lucky and blessed to have played with some unbelievable talent, some real champions and winners. So I've learned a lot along the way, but yeah, I think deep down I was always in a position where I wanted to stay in it my whole life.
And I listed a range of clubs there, and you've added Newquay and Torquay to that as well too. So was that common for women in that era almost to move around to play in that many clubs to get those opportunities?
We were I was very young growing up in, small towns like Torquay and Newquay. And, it was quite funny actually, because whilst Newquay's a million miles away from everywhere, we actually had a team that did tremendously well, and we actually got up as high as the Southern Division, which, if you remember, it used to be the Premier League, and then the North and the South, and we got as high as the South. Then we had a year where a lot of us went off to university, and that crumbled, bless them, and then they plummeted back down. But yeah, that was more growing up at a very, very early age. So just enjoyable really, but I think you have to, don't you, as a kid, just get to where you can play at the best level.
And then those other teams, I'm thinking of the ones that you were kind of then played in that semi-professional era. Was that a natural side for women to be moving across to so many different teams?
Yeah, I think at the time, yeah, because look, there was no money in it. Let's be honest. I remember when I first went to Bristol. I went to Bath University, and the head of football there was the manager at Bristol City Women, who were in the Premier League at the time, and he said he wanted me to come and play. You know, he thought I could make the step up, and I remember thinking, it's £50 a week, like unbelievable. And that sounds crazy, right? But that's what it was. And all of a sudden, you're getting £50 a game and you're thinking, oh, I'm getting paid for this. Then it starts to get a little bit more serious. So then it's less moving around, really, isn't it? But certainly before the money was involved, yeah, there was probably a little bit more movement, I would say.
And were there any clubs particularly that stand out that you really loved playing for? As you look back, was there a culture or where you really felt?
Yeah, I think there's, if we're going culture, I'd say Sheffield FC, because the manager there was Helen Mitchell, and she created an environment. I would like to say that I pride a lot of my managerial style on what I learnt there, just from the way that she managed people, the way that she got the best out of us. I mean, we shouldn't have been winning the way we were, let's be honest, with the team we had, but we did, because we had an unbelievable togetherness. We had a willingness to look after each other. And we had a culture that was a wholehearted culture where we would die for each other, you know? So I think that was probably the one that, well, it says it all when I stayed there for so long, that really honed in on who I was.
And have you seen the game evolve, the women's game evolve, as you thought it might do? If you look back to when you started playing, or even when you were playing at Bristol or at Bath Uni, is it where you thought it might get to from there?
Honestly, I always knew that it would get there, but I didn't maybe think to this level. Like, I was sat watching, obviously I've not missed a game of the Euros, the geek I am. And I was sat watching last night the Sweden game and then the Germany game, and I sit there and I look at the crowds and it's packed out, and then I compare it to, I went to the men's Euros under 21s as part of my pro license earlier on the month, and there was a couple of thousand here and there at games, and you sat there thinking, the women's game is really gone somewhere here. So it's unbelievable to be part of. Did I think that would happen? You probably hoped, but I don't think you really believed.
Yeah. And as you look back now over your kind of playing career, what are those momentous highlights? What are the real kind of moments that you reflect on?
I think with Sheffield FC getting promotion into the WSL, I think that was a moment, 94th minute winner against Portsmouth, most intense, terrible game of football, by the way. It really was, two teams that had been excellent all season. The pressure just mounted and it was just an awful game of football. But we managed to get over the line in the dying seconds to go up after a lot of hard work, because nobody gave us a chance. So I would think that would be one. And then, are we talking playing?
Yeah. I'll move on to talk about your coaching.
The other one, I would probably say for Lincoln in the semi-final, the FA Cup against Arsenal. Packed out Sinsel Bank and 5,000 people there, which was a lot of people at the time. And I just remember saying to the players in the dressing room, we've got to lay a glove on these and make it really difficult for them. And I talked about big tackles early. And then you've got Kelly Smith, Rachel Yankee rolling out. And let me tell you now, you couldn't tackle them. We just couldn't get anywhere near them. And they were a completely different level, but the experience was unbelievable. And I tell you what, I say it all the time, if Kelly Smith was now in this day and age, what she'd be worth would be monumental. She really would be. She was a fascinating player. So I'd say that game, just because it was David v Goliath and it felt like that out there. But what an opportunity.
And what was it? I've spoken to Kelly on the Game Changers. For one, I guess I didn't really follow football as closely as I do now when she was playing, really. So what was it about her as a player, would you say, that would make her, as you say, such an exceptional player if she was playing today?
Oh, look, she's Rolls Royce. She really is. I used to absolutely love watching her. And I'm glad she's still in the game to pass that experience back. I really am, because I just don't think this generation understands how good she was. She'd glide around a pitch, she'd make things happen. Sometimes she wouldn't need to get out of second gear. But yeah, she was somebody that I just absolutely loved watching and admired massively. So yeah, look, if she was here in this day and age, the money she'd be worth would be outrageous. So yeah, it was a horrible game because we got beat 5-1. But look, we got on the score sheet and we got to play against them in their absolute prime. But yeah, she's the best way to describe her. I thought she was a Rolls Royce player.
Absolutely. Did you always know that coaching would be your next step? Would be, you said, that whole kind of desire to stay in football forever, or was there a moment that you realised?
I think there was a moment. I don't think I'd ever really thought about it, and I had my I sadly had an injury which required spinal surgery.
How old were you then?
Oh, good question. Late 20s.
Right.
So I started my badges through that, and I was coaching Chef Uni just part-time, bit of money, bit of experience, loved the game. And then I quickly then in 2015 did it again. So then I had my second lot of spinal surgery, and at that point I'm thinking, I've not got long here. And I had doctors kind of saying, you shouldn't be considering playing. I had one unbelievable physio that was like, we're going to get you back. But then when I came back, when the youngsters start going past you and you think, I'm not running this, I'm not going to dictate in this game anymore. And that was a real moment of, what does next look like? And I still probably didn't know. And then I was just leaving Sheffield FC and I was about to go to Doncaster Bells and play for Neil Redfern in one final season and try and win WSL2 and then retire. And I was on my way back from training, the very first night I went training. And I was on my way back and I had a voicemail, and the voicemail was from Kevin McCabe, who was the owner at Sheffield United. And it basically said, look, we'd like to talk to you. And I thought, what's he want to talk to me for? Anyway, I went and sat down the next day with him and some of the board at Sheffield United, and they basically said, look, we want to be forward thinking with the women. We want to go for promotion. We need to put a bid together. We need somebody that really has those expertise in helping us deliver that. We want that to be you. And I'm sat there thinking, right, and what does it look like in return? I can help you with a bid. I can give you all this knowledge. Well, what does it look like for me? And they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to coach. I want to continue my coaching journey. So the idea was that collectively we put together the bid. And then if we make it, I go into the head coach role and get a mentor whilst I do my A license. So that was that. Off we went, got to work, big group of us, presented it at Wembley, and then off we went. We managed to make it. And I think at that point I thought, I'm about to be a head coach in the WSL2 here. I'm like a fish out of water. I've only just finished kicking a ball around, and I retired overnight and I couldn't quite grasp it. I cried my eyes out some nights and I was thinking, what am I doing here? Like I've just stopped playing football.
So were you player coach? You were player coach at the time, or in title? Yeah,
on paper. Yeah, I didn't kick a ball for them though. So yeah, it really happened quite quickly. But the moment I had that phone call was the moment I thought, if I don't take this opportunity, somebody else will. So it was worth the sleepless nights. I did get quite upset for a week or two thinking, I'm not a player. Where's my career just gone? But it was the right thing to do. And I had to take that opportunity. So I did.
And what, kind of hats off to him for seeing that in you. Have you spoken to him about that, I guess, since that time, as to what it was that saw him to identify you and give you that opportunity?
Yeah, he's a really good guy. I keep in contact with him, even though he left Sheffield United. He's actually we opened up a coffee shop in Scarborough. He owns the Scarborough Group, and he opened up a coffee shop and called it Hartley's, as in my little girl.
Yeah.
So we sometimes try to get down there, and although I haven't seen him for a couple of years, but yeah, he's. I did used to ask that, but I think, look, I had a business in Sheffield, a t-shirt printing company for many years, and I supplied quite a lot of sports teams in and around. And I think he probably knew I had the business acumen as well as the sports side, and he probably saw me as a well connected in the game. And I think that's maybe where he wanted to tap into. Little did he realise I was going to say, look, I would like a piece of this. But look, it ended up working for both, and it really helped me get off the mark in my coaching career because I was thrown in at the deep end, put it that way.
And how long were you there for before you moved on to other roles?
What was I, 4 years at Sheffield United? Yeah, and I had Mick Wadsworth as my mentor, who he is fascinating. Obviously, it was Bobby Robson's number 2 for many, many years. I was very fortunate. He was head of the academy at Sheffield United. I had a very good support network around me. I think Sheffield United really allowed me to learn, grow, make mistakes, and I made many of them, because when you go from a player to a manager, anyone that thinks it's easy, it has got to be the hardest thing I experienced. And because you're not a player anymore, you're not the joke of the dressing room. You're somebody you've got to quickly change. So Sheffield United allowed me to make mistakes, grow with them, and give me a real platform to step into the world that I wanted to be in.
And how tough was that? When you kind of think about that whole being a player, being part of a team, and I imagine some of the hardest parts are making those tough calls of dropping players, or letting players go altogether. How have you personally dealt with kind of that challenge of being a manager?
It was really tough at the start, because we're talking about your friends that you played with, your friends that, your teammates, and that was really tough. And I didn't handle it very well, actually. When I look back, I made a lot of mistakes in those first couple of years.
And being too close and turn too much motion, or?
Yeah, I'd say so. And then you'd have conversations where you're a teammate, but you're not a teammate. You have to really change those dynamics quickly, which is difficult when you've been in the dressing room with them for so long. Because I recruited a lot of people that I knew and I'd played with, that I made a mistake as well. So I made an awful lot of mistakes, but it taught me quite quickly, because I had to change, I had to adapt. So that was difficult, but like I said, I think I'm a big believer in the quicker you make a mistake, the quicker you get up and you learn. So I made an awful lot of mistakes, and then I learned from it and managed to move us forward.
And how would you describe your coaching philosophy now as it's kind of evolved in a few sentences?
I'm very big on people, because I believe if you can get somebody smiling, enjoying themselves and playing with a confidence, I always think you can get a couple of % more. So I'm somebody that likes to look after people. I would like to think I'd be known as somebody that would go the extra mile for individuals, and people would probably sum me up as a manager of, I care an awful lot. I treat them as 22, 23 daughters, but then want to play with a smile on their face, because like I said, I think if I go back to the Sheffield FC days, I think I played the best football of my career based on the fact I was really happy. So I would probably say that would sum me up. With the ball, we like playing with the ball. We like to be exciting, of course. I know, I've been criticised in the past from a defensive side of the game that maybe needs a little bit more focus, but I've always been someone that likes to play with the ball, and sometimes that probably hurts you the other way, but you can't say any of my teams haven't been exciting so far.
Can you see that in other teams as you watch? You say you're sat here watching the Euros at the moment. Can you see when you feel teams are happy and enjoying being on a pitch versus those that maybe aren't?
Yeah. Don't ask me who doesn't look happy at the minute. But
no, I was not going to throw you under the bus then and ask the question. But
I think you can. I think there's a sense of, and maybe that isn't always necessarily to do with the manager, but that also could be to do with the dynamics in the team. Dynamics between groups of players or staff. There's always reasons why. Players are always gonna dislike managers. It's funny because one of the players started singing recently. What's the song? Players are only happy when they're playing. Players love you when they're playing, right? That's a fact. They dislike you when they're not. That's just normal. It's a way of life. But you can always gauge if there's some unrest in a team.
And how do you help them become more resilient? Because I know you have managed some teams through some really tough circumstances on and off the pitch, and whether it's finances and where they are, promotion, relegation and so on, and still delivering those results. So what do you think is the key to building that resilience and as you mentioned, that unity with the team as well?
Yeah, I do think it's a togetherness. I think it's doing maybe things outside the box, trying to get players to be vulnerable with each other, which is a lot easier at club than it is international, because you have them for very little time. So I think at club it's a lot easier to build that. It's a lot easier to get people together to do different things. You can do lots of things in the classroom. You can do lots of things on the outdoors. That aren't football related. And I think that people do laugh at me, actually, particularly some of the coaches that have recently worked with me, because they say you always find a way to make people smile. You always find a way to get these things in. But I think you have to, because they're around each other. Do you know, footballers see each other more than they see their family.
Yeah.
So you have to try and create that somehow, which, like I said, is a lot easier at club than it is country, because you see them for a lot less. But it's a belief and creating that belief and confidence in each other is key, I think.
I'm going to move on to talk about that transition away from the club game and what you're doing now. But I just want to touch on last summer, and you had this amazing experience going out to Paris, the Paris Olympics. Can you tell us about how that opportunity came about and what your involvement was there?
Yeah, so I was in Dubai on holiday, and it was interesting because on the last, I think it was second to last day of the season, we played Chelsea, and Emma said to me, would you want to do a bit of scouting in the summer? And I was like, yeah, no problem. Didn't really know what it entailed. And then I was on holiday in Dubai. And
it's Emma Hayes, would you say?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. And I'd had a few cocktails, being honest. And she had messaged me saying, do you want to come to the Olympics and do some scouting? I said, yeah, sounds good. But I don't think I was really understanding. Then she put me in contact with somebody else. And then I said, oh, I've got a holiday and then I could probably make it. And she was like, we need someone to join us in camp. And I thought, hold on a minute, I've misread this situation massively. I've got an opportunity here to go to the Olympics and watch the very best work. What am I thinking? So I cancelled that holiday quicker than I could say. Boo. And I joined them out there. Unbelievable opportunity. I think seeing Emma work, particularly that first period I was with the team, and it was fascinating. And then I went off to scout games and report on the opposition, which was interesting actually, because I got to watch an awful lot of Brazil. And then once the semi-final was done, it was straight back after that semi-final, straight back to meet back up with them, report on Brazil, and then we had the final. And yeah, it was an unbelievable opportunity. I mean, I say it all the time, Emma's been great for me, she really has. And she's guided me, she's helped me when I've really needed it. Early on when I had some tough times at Birmingham, she really guided me and helped me through those difficult moments. So to get to watch her and see why she is the very best, cemented everything I believed. So yeah, it was a fascinating opportunity.
And what a great opportunity for you to go and watch that, put fully attention on players and seeing how they play, that you're learning from that experience too.
100%. I mean, Emma said to me, I think it was night 1 or 2, we sat down one evening and she said, what do you think? And I said, I just can't believe how simple you make everything. Everything is just simple, clear, to the point. And she said, well, 25 years I've been doing this. And I said, yeah. And that's why you can see she's the very, very best. But yeah, I've been very fortunate to tap into her experience over the years and very grateful for the knowledge that she's passed on.
And I mentioned that you'd coached a number of different clubs, different circumstances. But as you look back on that, I asked you earlier about your kind of proudest playing moment. In a club environment, managing a club, what are you most proud of, your achievements there?
I'd say 2. One, keeping Birmingham up, because, no one give us a chance. I remember sitting in my back garden that's in front of me right now, and I said to a good friend of mine, do I take this? And everybody said, don't take it. Don't take the job. This could ruin you. And I said, well, it's a win-win, right? So if I keep them up, I make a name for myself. If we get relegated, everyone thinks we're going to get relegated. So This is a win-win. And I thought, no one's giving me a chance here. Like, let's go for it. So that's why I took it. So to stay up was just an unbelievable feeling. It really was. And then the second one would be finishing 5th and finishing off with a 2-0 win away at Arsenal to finish 5th at Villa was an unbelievable achievement, because everybody thought we spent a lot of money and we really didn't. What we did was bring in players that weren't playing at their clubs, give them that confidence again. A lot of them had big pay drops, but they came into an environment that we allowed them to be themselves, be confident, play with a smile on their faces, and we ended up finishing 5th, and that was huge. So I would say those 2 moments for sure.
And we're going to come on to talk about the work that you're doing now, but you've been really open and honest about the challenge of balancing a full-on, super intense career with personal life, especially as a mother, and it can be so challenging, and it's going to impact on your mental well-being and your personal life generally. So just to kind of take you back to, I guess, the decisions that you made around that time, having had the success that you've said, you clearly had success with teams, but why did you kind of choose to step away from that?
Yeah, that was a really, really tough decision. I think it started around Christmas time, and my little girl sort of said, Mummy, are you off tomorrow? And I said, no, baby, you are. And she said, when am I going to spend some time with you? And that, as a mother, cut deep. And that was really, really difficult. And I remember going to work thinking, I tell everybody what I do is for my little one. Everything you do for your children, right? You want to give your children the best way in life, best opportunities in life. But here I am working 24/7, never seeing her, and that was really tough. And I think it kept eating away at me, and I don't think I actually realised until I left the impact that was having on me mentally. And I went to the club, probably a couple of months later, I think February, March, and I said, I want to have a conversation about an early termination. I really feel like I'm mentally burning out. I want to see my daughter, not seeing her enough. And to be honest, Aston Villa is a football club. They're a wonderful football club. They really are. Treated me so very well and basically said, look, can we help you? Can we get a nanny? Can we, help with, they give me so many options. Now, the problem is I split from Hartley's other mother 4 years ago now, after a long time. So I think moving Hartley is not possible. Moving myself is not possible. So, as much as Aston Villa were unbelievable, to try and help, it just wasn't possible. And I went back and forth, them trying to ask me to stay, me almost pleading with their help. I actually asked Unai in a meeting one day. Unai came in and he was really good, actually helped me because he was in a similar situation when he left Arsenal, just needed to breathe, needed to go away, needed to have some time. And that probably helped me with the board. But they were great. They really were. They supported me. And then they finally agreed. I think it was around, what was it, April, May time, they finally agreed. And then, when that final day passed, which was rather than emotional, it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I went the very next day on holiday with my daughter and I thought, I'm going on holiday without having to work 24/7 because I don't care what anyone says. The off season is not an off season for coaches and managers. So I thought, wow. And then it was probably after the Olympics, again, when I got back from the Olympics, I went on holiday with the little one. And at that point, I thought, I've got some time with you here. I can go to swimming. I can go to dance. I can go and be the mum that I haven't been. And it was tough, but it was the right decision.
And at what point then did you find out or they found you in terms of this national role with the Irish women?
Yeah, it was around Christmas time. Funnily enough, there'd been another country that I'd spoken to a couple of weeks before, but it just didn't fit where I was in life. So I was out for dinner and my mum came up for the Christmas markets and we were sat having dinner. And I just got a call saying that we're going through a process you're somebody would like to speak to. Basically, the interview's in a couple of days' time. And I was thinking, this is a quick turnaround. So Christmas cancelled almost. And you have to put them presentations together, etc. So yeah, from the first call on the 18th of December to getting appointed on the 8th of January,
Wow.
It was 3 stages, quite intense. Yeah, I know I joke Christmas was cancelled, but there was a lot of work to be done in that period. So got down to the final few which was in London face to face. And then, got offered the job that evening after the final interview. So I was delighted, to be honest, because I knew that it was the next step in my career, but also what would be worthwhile for my personal life and my family life.
And has it brought you, that international management, the better work-life balance that you'd anticipated?
Yeah, sounds daft, but to be the mum that goes and watches her swimming, watches her dance, watches her basketball, watches her football, I love it. And I love just sitting there, just being a mum to her and being able to do things. And it's great, just having a weekend with her, which is unheard of. I mean, this summer is the first summer, because last summer I had the Olympics, but this summer is the very first summer since Hartley's been born that I'm actually going to have time with her. So yeah, it's been really, really good. I've loved it. And she comes to Dublin sometimes, which is good. She gets treated like an absolute princess when she goes there. So yeah, it's absolutely fitted my work-life balance for sure.
And from the managerial experience and that process, you did just allude to it earlier of having less time with players, but how else is it different in managing that national team versus managing a club?
Yeah, it is different in so many ways. Like, I like to build relationships, and that is me in a nutshell. There just isn't enough time. They're in for 9-10 days, they're out of there. Then you've got to manage everything in between from an organisation point of view, from a nation point of view. I do miss that day-to-day interaction. I think that's probably the toughest part of it. But I've teed up a lot of coaches for pre-season to come in and have a look and, keep ticking over. But that is difficult because you're normally talking day-to-day. There's also only a couple of us that are full-time. So then all my staff are all working somewhere else. So that's also tough because if you need to get things done, you're almost on your own with that. But that's just part and parcel. But it's certainly a different dynamic, let me tell you.
And different pressures in that it's a national team. Does it feel different? Weight on your shoulders and almost not your nation also?
Yeah, and you've got 2 games and then you haven't got time. If you need to put something right, you've then got to wait so long to put things right. That's difficult. But yeah, the weight of the nation, the pressures from the media are very different. I have exceptional relationships with the media, particularly over here.
Good relationships. You say exceptional?
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Look, I can't tell you, you need the media. Let's be really honest. You need the media. They need you. You've got to work with them. But it's taken some time because you're only seeing the Irish media in bits and pieces. It's probably taken longer to develop those relationships because you don't have as much interaction with them. But I'm starting to build on that now, and that's important because like I said, I think everybody wants the same goal, right? And that's to see the national team win and be successful. But in order to do that, you need everybody on board.
And what are your kind of future aspirations? I mentioned introduction. Obviously, had a great kind of appearance in 2023 at the FIFA Women's World Cup. But what are your realistic expectations for the team?
Yeah, look, I think we want to get to the World Cup. We know that's going to be difficult. Only 11 European teams make that. So we know that's going to be difficult. But look, we've got a group of players that are hungry. Look, they are so passionate, that Irish national team. They really are so passionate about playing for their country, desperate to play for their country. So we've got every chance with that. I've talked about it before. Some people might not give us a chance, but within, we'll all give each other a chance and we'll give it everything we've got to try and get there. Beyond that, I think we have to qualify for the Euros. No ifs or buts would be my words. Nobody else's words, but I think we absolutely have to make the next Euros. So they're sort of the short and medium term, and then we'll assess where we're at because you know what it's like. I don't think managers last too long in the game anymore, do they?
We don't have success. And how much are you, because I was thinking, obviously you deal with this team that comes to you, but it's the whole pathway, isn't it? Where those players come from, the system, the support. So how much are you are you just like presented with, here are your players, or how much are you able to get involved with where they're coming from and what's being done to generate and bring those players forward?
Yeah, I'm quite hands-on. I like to get my eyes across everything. And I think one of the things we've been looking at quite deeply is the League of Ireland, which is sadly it's a part-time league, but there is some young quality in there. The national teams have got some quality. It's just about how do we nurture them, how do we guide them, how do we make sure that they've got everything they need to step up and be a successful footballer. We also have just recruited a talent ID team that are looking at all the possibilities of who might be eligible to play for Ireland. So there's lots of different avenues. I think it's really important that we continue to look within Ireland though, because they're, give the opportunity to the young girls in Ireland, because that's massive and that's we've got to future-proof that for them. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're on with that at the moment. We're discussing that, we're talking about it, but it's a big chunk of work that's not necessarily football on the grass, but definitely a piece of work that needs to be done.
And we've talked about, I guess, that motherhood piece and that balance of, and it's almost not, I don't want to paint a negative picture, but actually it is really challenging to do those two. So do you feel football, when I use football in a very generic sense of women's football, is moving in the right direction in the way it's approaching coaches and players as well that want to be mothers?
Yeah, I think it's got a long way to go. I think the US do it really well. They have environments that allow kids to come in. They have creches, nannies. I think it's very different here. I would only ever take Hartley in on a international break, never really in season, because there's just too much going on. There isn't really, everybody's full throttle. So,
and is that different? Sorry, just to interrupt you there. So in terms of the US, so what you've seen, yeah. And I guess we used Emma Hayes as an example of, but that is a very different environment. Is that just a historical? They've seen the value in creating that supportive culture?
Yeah, I think they must see the value in it, because I spoke to Kelly Chambers a couple of months ago and I was asking how life is out there with the family. And she said, best thing they've ever done. You know, the kids are looked after, the kids come into the training ground, there's a creche, they're looked after, there's a play area. They make it very, very inclusive. And I think, wow, like that's something that could be introduced here. But I
Yeah.
think we're a little bit further away than that. But I do think that the game isn't geared up yet to fully supporting women with kids. Now, I was really lucky at Aston Villa, and I keep saying this, like they were unbelievable to me. They really were. And I think that I was really fortunate, but I know there's other clubs that aren't as open as Aston Villa. So I think maybe it's a case of club by club, what they do to help mothers and parents, but it is difficult. It really is difficult.
And in terms of the players, we obviously there's kind of considerations there and so much around the physical support around motherhood and coming back to. But from a coaching perspective, is there anything? Is it down to female coaches, which I don't believe it is, but in terms of the system itself needing to change? I know you've talked about co-coaching as a kind of potential option. Do you feel that is something that should be explored?
Yeah, I also think the way the game's going, I think that it's starting to go manager who manages the group, the organisation, picks a team, and then you've got the head coaches that lead your philosophy, what you want. I think the more it's going that way, the more I think that you could potentially go down that route. If I went back into WSL football, which I'm sure I will at some point, I think that that's what I would like. Go in as a manager, have a head coach, and then I think that takes a little bit of burden off, because you can't do it all. And for years, I probably thought I could.
And is that a bit about the investment too, isn't it? Then having a club having that funding, but it doesn't. Do they need to be full time? I feel when I've researched you and looked at the work that you do, God, it's more than it's so many hours in the day and constantly being on call. Is it possible to divide that between two people?
Yeah, you would still work an awful lot of hours. There's no way that you wouldn't work the same amount of hours, but what it would do is release some pressure to allow you to do the management side of the job better, more strategic, probably a little bit more refined. I think that would allow then a coach to concentrate on the grass and then the manager to concentrate off the grass. And I think that could be really powerful. And even just taking a little bit of workload away is huge now in the game. It really is.
And in terms of being that top level coach manager, how do you keep learning and evolving with modern coaching technologies? Where are you learning?
Yeah, do you know what? It's something I've talked about recently, actually, because as in not publicly, but I think that in international football, there's that period between, and you really need to continue your brain moving, right? And you can't go stale. So I'm used to talking football every day, but then when you take that away, it becomes difficult. So I, on my pro license, got lots of me being me, tried to tap into all the guys, kind of come into environment. I'm going into quite a few environments this summer, and I'm going to continue to do that. So have a look how people work, how people, with their processes and yeah, so I think that's going to be me this summer and beyond, really. I'm going to be that annoying person tapping between clubs.
So a warning to people, she's coming.
Yeah.
We obviously desperately need more female coaches across sport, including football. Yeah. Do you think is enough being done to encourage players to consider transition to coaching? Would you encourage your players to think about that?
100%. I think more so with players, because I think players, live and breathe it. I think there's top players that can add so much value to the game, whether that's coaching, whether that's performance, whether that's analyst. There's so much quality to go back in the game. The only thing I would say is going from a player salary to a coach salary, and people won't realise this, is a massive drop. And by the way, they're going to have to do 10 times the amount of work.
Yeah.
So that's where I remember having a conversation. She won't mind me saying this, but I remember having a conversation with Jill Scott before she went in the jungle, because I was going to bring her in as a technical coach. And I think the agent thought I was joking when I said what the pay looked like. And it's bonkers. Then she goes in the jungle and then the rest is history, right? Look at her now. She's on every single TV channel you put on. But yeah, I think there's a reality then of, wow, they might want to go down the media route where you get more money. They might want to go down a different route. So as much as I think they need to go back in, there probably needs to be a level of, there probably needs to be a conversation on the increase on coaches' wages.
Yeah.
Being really honest, because there's a lot of work that goes in. It's 24/7, it's non-stop. But the average pay for a coach, we're not talking a manager or a head coach, we're talking a coach, is very, very low, should I say.
And very different to the men's game in the same way that, you're nodding.
I'm nodding, yeah, because it's bonkers. And we definitely want to keep these players in the game. There's so much knowledge out there, and we need more female coaches in the game with that type of knowledge. So there needs to be something that's met halfway here.
And without putting you on the spot in terms of the numbers, how many female head coaches or managers are there in the WSL 1 at the moment?
How you say what is in an average?
How many? Oh. Yeah, in the clubs. Okay, no, roughly how many clubs have women leading those roles?
What have we got? So we've got Renee, we've got West Ham, we've got Arsenal, we've got Leicester, Natalia at Villa. Who am I missing? Am I missing someone? I think that might be it at the moment.
And is that less than it's been in the past? Are we moving in the right direction? I'm thinking of comparing it with the Premiership Women's Rugby, where we don't have any at the moment. We had 7.
Yeah.
So what's the direction of travel, do you feel, in terms of women in those roles?
I think it's fluctuating. I think it needs, in the Championship this year, it's going to be fascinating because there is a lot of female coaches.
Yeah.
But the problem you've got now is, I think WSL clubs go down this data route with the European leagues. You can't compare European leagues to the WSL. The WSL for me is hands down the very best league. So I think we make this mistake of recruiting from abroad when we have got so much quality in this country. There is a huge amount of quality in terms of coaches, head coaches in the Championship right now.
WSL 2.
Yeah, sorry, WSL 2. It changes, doesn't it, like the weather? So I can't wait to see some of them shine because, a lot of them deserve an opportunity in the WSL. And I think that we're in a good position in terms of bringing some female coaches through. They just need an opportunity, like I was given the opportunity. Yeah,
absolutely. And you've taken on roles on mentorship and supporting upcoming coaches. So what drives your passion there? And I guess you've already highlighted that opportunity that you've had in the past.
Yeah, just to almost give someone an opportunity that I had. But it's really funny because I can mentor someone, but then in a conversation, you can take something from everybody. If you're open to learning, you can learn off every single person you meet. I believe that. And I'm like that annoying sponge. I want to take something from everybody. I want to listen. I want to learn. And I think if you, in those mentor roles, you can learn both ways. So it's win-win, but you can also give back. And that's really important because I was really fortunate with Emma. So yeah, how do we then continue to pass that knowledge down and through?
And I love how you've talked so openly about the making mistakes and learning from those. But if you were able to go back and give yourself some advice and maybe at that point that you're just transitioning from player to coach across your coaching journey, is there anything you would do differently or a different approach that you'd have?
Yeah, at the time, I probably thought I knew more than I did. I think at the time, probably lean on experienced people, although I didn't have many of those around me. But maybe I could have tapped into other people. My advice would be utilize people. I'm very open to that now. And I was very open to that probably, I'd say a year after. Probably I'd fallen on my face 10 times and my nose started to hurt. So I tap into people very, very early in my journey. That's what I would have done.
And just finally, and I guess you've painted a positive picture of coaching, and yet it has challenges. And we've talked about, never mind pay and the hours, required and so on. But what would you say to women that might be thinking about coaching as a role, as a career moving forward? Like, what is it that you love about being a coach? Why would you recommend that as a career path?
Make it a difference. You can develop people, you can develop players, but I would say be authentic, because I think I've probably developed, let's go back to the media, I've probably developed a relationship with people, particularly the media, from being myself. Often you can be robotic, should I say. Often some people, clubs maybe don't want you to be yourself, want you to be the way or speak in a way that isn't yourself. I was fortunate, like I said, to be at a club that allowed me to be myself, and I think it's important that you are true to who you are.
What a joy to talk to Carla. I love her openness and her honesty about all things. If you'd like to hear from more top coaches, previous guests on the podcast have included football coaches like Emma Hayes, Casey Stoney and Hope Powell, along with women coaching at the very top of a whole range of sports, including Judy Murray, Mel Marshall, Jess Thirlby, Jenny Meadows and Charlotte Edwards. In fact, if it's trailblazers in sport you're after, there are over 200 episodes of The Game Changers that are all free to listen to on all podcast platforms or from our website at fearlesswomen.co.uk. Guests include Olympians, Paralympians, world champions, coaches, entrepreneurs, broadcasters, scientists, journalists and CEOs, all women who are changing the game in sport. As well as listening to all the podcasts on the website, you can also find out more about the Women's Sport Collective, a free, inclusive community for all women that work in sport. We now have over 13,000 members across the world, so please do come and join us. The whole of my book, Game On, The Unstoppable Rise of Women's Sport, is also free to listen to on the podcast. Every episode of Series 13 is me reading a chapter of the book. Thank you once again to Sport England for backing the Game Changers and the Women's Sport Collective, through the National Lottery, and to Sam Walker at What Goes On Media, who does such an excellent job as our executive producer. Thank you also to my brilliant colleague at Fearless Women, Kate Hannon. You can find the Game Changers on all podcast platforms, so please follow us now and you won't miss out on future episodes. Do come and say hello on social media, where you'll find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at Sue Anstis. The Game Changers. Fearless Women in Sport.